My name is Caroline Bressey and I'm a lecturer in Cultural and Historical Geography in the Department of Geography here at UCL, and my particular interests are the Black presence in 19th century London. But I'm also very interested in how that history is represented in urban landscapes as public history, something I'm very interested in, and also how it's represented in things like museums and art galleries. So Joy Gregory, who is an artist, has done a project called Sights of Africa, which tries to bring out what some of the work that I try to do as an academic and researcher. So she's highlighting the Black presence way back to the 1700s and sort of pointing out parts of the city where the Black presence could be remembered, even if it's not inscribed into the urban landscape. And I guess I'm interested in trying to provide the sort of academic information that gives people those kind of snippets from history. I'm particularly interested in Black Victorians, the period that includes people like Mary Seacole, who was a Jamaican-born nurse, born in Jamaica, in Kingston, Jamaica. Her father was Scottish and her mother was Jamaican and a nurse, and she was brought up in the arts of nursing, which she eventually came to Britain to offer to the soldiers in the Crimean War. She ran a hotel not far from the front in Crimea, and there the officers were able to sort of eat in the canteen that she ran, but she also used it as a base for her nursing activities, for which she won a number of medals, which you can see her proudly wearing in this portrait, which hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. The Crimean War ended rather abruptly, and so she and her partner were made bankrupt. And as part of trying to raise funds, she wrote an autobiography, The Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands, which was published in the 1850s, went into 2 editions. And also there were various sort of fundraising events for her. So as a result, she's perhaps one of the better known Black Victorians of British history. So I'm interested in trying to find ordinary folk, people who were in the crowd, people who didn't write their own autobiography, and people who haven't had much written about them. So people like this gentleman, this comes from an early engraving from the early 1900s. He sits in a public house somewhere in London, and is very much just sort of one of the ordinary folk sitting in the pub. But it's rather difficult to find these people because the kind of resources that historians of the 19th century would usually use, like the census, doesn't record the colour of a person's skin, their ethnicity, as a matter of course, not actually until the late 20th century. So in my research I tend to use photographs, so it's an opportunity to look through archives that have photographs attached and find Black people in them. It does mean that my work tends to focus on people in the margins, so people who are in prison, people who are in children's homes, people who are in asylums, like this woman, Caroline Bressey. She, again, appeared to be a very ordinary member of the working class living in London. She was married, she was in the asylum for a year, so she seems to have something temporary that happened to her. She left and presumably just became an ordinary member of the working class. But what's interesting is that on her admission records to the asylum, there's no mention of the colour of her skin at all. So without the photograph, we wouldn't know that she was a Black woman. And this raises interesting questions about how many others there might be in the archives who, because we can't see their colour, we assume them to be white. So how we get round that is something that I and others are working on. But of course, not everyone was part of these very marginalised communities. There were very ordinary members of society and actually quite elite members of society. So Sarah Davis was one of those elite members of the society. She was originally an orphan, so she came from rather humbler background, we might think. She was brought indeed to England as a gift. She was given to a naval officer by the King of Dahomey and presented to Queen Victoria. And sort of when she was brought back to England in 1850, so Captain Forbes wrote to Queen Victoria via the Admiralty and said, "I've been given this girl as a present, really what should we do with her?" And so Queen Victoria took responsibility for her, and the two would stay in touch throughout Sarah's life. And indeed Sarah and her eldest daughter Victoria would both be goddaughters to the Queen. But these images are taken, or were taken, in 1862, just after Sarah's marriage to James Davis, who you can see in the photographs with her. She was married in Brighton, and they had their honeymoon in London before they returned to Lagos, where they settled down and had their family. And usually this album is in the archives at the National Portrait Gallery, but at the moment it's on display as part of an exhibition on Camille Sylvie. So if you're looking for something to do in Black History Month, go into the National Portrait Gallery, where you'll be able to see the portrait of Mary Seacole and also this picture of Sarah Davis. That might be something that you'd like to do.